Sir David Amess.
I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this debate, and I congratulate my honourable friend on his brilliant leadership of the recent delegation of which I was privileged to be a member of. And I should tell the House that I found none of my colleagues disagreeable on this trip. I should also say my honourable friend, the member for Enfield Southgate, exhibited true leadership skills. And I would say to him that if ever an honourable friend were fit for office, he is. I'm also delighted to see my honourable friend, the Minister, the member for Bournemouth East, is going to be responding to this debate because I know him well. And he isn't a minister who will respond with a lot of waffle. I anticipate that he's going to agree with everything that has been said during this debate. And given the fact that, as I understand it, the Foreign Secretary will be visiting Cyprus in a short while, the timing of this debate couldn't be better. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, when I first became a Member of Parliament, I was taken to the island of Cyprus. I have no constituency interest at all. Very few Cypriots, whether they be Greek or Turkish, live in my constituency. But I just couldn't believe, visiting the island, this tiny island, that it was divided by a green line. And as far as Famagusta is concerned, which this debate is really focusing on, I can best liken it to Great Expectations and Miss Havisham. It's very much like a time warp. And it is very distressing when you visit this area to see these buildings which have stood empty and decaying since 1974, which is an absolute disgrace. And Madam Deputy Speaker, when we started on the visit, I was very, very cynical about the prospects of a settlement, because I'd heard it all before. As we all know, there's no problem between Cypriots, whether they live on the north or south side. It's when the two mother countries start to intervene that it becomes challenging. But I have to say to the House that I was so impressed with the meetings that we had, particularly with what the acting president had to say and what the negotiator had to say, that I really think that it will be the last time any British parliamentary group will be visiting the island when it's still divided. I am very optimistic that in 2 or 3 months' time we will at long last see a united Ireland. So I congratulate my honourable friend again for his timing of our trip. Now, we could go back, Madam Deputy Speaker, to 1974 and say it was a disaster which should never have happened. We can often be wise after the events. It is a tragedy, really, that it happened then and that all these years later it hasn't been solved. But I've decided it's no good going on about the past. Got to draw a line underneath it, as Cypriots on both sides have decided to do. And I was very pleased that on the 18th of September this year, our Prime Minister met with the Greek Cypriot President, and there was a general meeting of minds of the issue. I believe that there is a need for Turkey to send specific signals through specific actions that would enhance the ongoing settlement process. Now, the recent election of the new leader on the northern side is widely seen as something that has significantly increased the prospects of a solution.
Does my honourable friend agree with me that this also presents the opportunity for the missing persons perhaps to be located and identified, having seen for ourselves the bones that were seemingly strewn across tables and being sorted in the anthropological laboratory of both Greek and Cypriot persons? This should be something that is a priority for both sides to come together so that those who did lose loved ones can lay them to rest.
I absolutely am going to agree with my honourable friend. I'm just going to come to that point in a minute, because I hadn't seen the detail of the DNA testing that was going on with the bones. I just want to come back to the election of the new leader. His first act on assuming office was to abolish the entry visa for visitors to northern Cyprus, something that had long angered Greek Cypriots, and I think that's a very, very positive move. Of course, there are obstacles to overcome, such as governance, security, territory, and as my two honourable friends have already mentioned, refugees. However, if relations continue to be positive, and they certainly seem to be positive, I'm optimistic that with the support of the UK, our support, we were told over and over again, was absolutely crucial, there can be a fairly swift unification in 2 to 3 months. The potential impact of the term of Famagusta on Greek Cypriots, you can't overestimate it. It would be very, very significant indeed. The term of Famagusta will be an enormous confidence builder for Greek Cypriots, and I believe that it is an important humanitarian move which will allow the return of 40,000 to their homes. Now, coming on to the point that my honourable friend said about missing persons, I don't know if one of my honourable friends want to intervene, but I think it's about 1,500 Greek Cypriots missing, about 500 Turkish Cypriots missing. Now, I think we were all shocked at the detail of the work that goes into tracing these missing people. And when we were taken into the laboratories, if we had had a loved one whose bones were somewhere in the room, I think it would have been too overwhelming for us. We could manage to step back because we didn't actually know any of the people. But I had no idea of the detail that went on, the forensic detail that went on. And the House should know this is a very, very expensive operation. And I know the Department for International Development is stretched on this issue, but if there is anyone who could perhaps lend some financial support, it would mean a great deal to all those concerned.
One of the encouraging times when everyone visits is actually looking at the work done by the Bicommunal Committee on Missing Persons. Given that the laboratory which we actually visit ourselves is on British land, and I understand there's been some in-kind support with a vehicle and so forth, it's encouraging that the Foreign Secretary is going to be visiting that laboratory, and it'd be good for him to see how we can, whether in kind or actually, provide as much financial support as necessary to help support the information that these missing persons, these relatives need.
My honourable friend makes a wonderful point, and he's absolutely right about the timing of the visit. So I do hope, though, that although it was explained to us we'll never find all the missing persons, it would mean so much if we could continue with the work for the foreseeable future. And
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking as someone that's the chairman of Remembering Srebrenica and all the work that goes on into tracing people in Srebrenica, it is not that difficult if you can get the DNA off a bone and people who are close relatives have their DNA taken. There's 2 parts to it, and that can be done quite quickly underneath the United Nations.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, but I think as was explained to us a difficulty that some of the burial grounds are now under multi-storey buildings. They're under housing developments. It really perhaps isn't quite such a straightforward issue.
Grateful for the honourable member giving way. Can I also remind him it's not just where the bones are actually located. Some have been dispersed by wild animals, some indeed have been washed away, and those that have been bleached by the sun often lose their DNA.
My honourable friend reminds me of that specific point, and I think to summarise on this issue, the experts are doing a fantastic job, but there is a limit to how far they can go on this. And to touch on the other issue that my honourable friend for Hendon mentioned, in terms of the graves, I was shocked and horrified when we visited the graves to see the Greek Cypriot graves absolutely vandalised, crosses broken up, everything dug up to see if there were any riches there like the Egyptians used to have, and yet the Turkish graves right opposite were kept in magnificent order. And this is all done through European Union funding. An absolute scandal and an insult. And I do think the House really would be well directed to find out more information about this, because this is an issue. I know my honourable friend, the member for Enfield Southgate, tried to get a group of volunteers to go over there to do something about the graves. But this is a relatively small matter which with will could be put right very, very quickly. But the lady who took us to see where her loved ones were buried, I mean, she broke down in our arms, and my honourable friend comforted her.
Does my honourable friend also agree with me that it's not only the graveyards but the churches that have been destroyed? And it's all, in my opinion, part of the oppression of people, and really something should be done to rectify this.
Absolutely. I mean, to see one of the churches turned into a stable, how insulting the whole thing was. And if only we'd have had the Archbishop or his deputy visiting with us on those particular trips, it would have made it even better. So in conclusion, I do think we could do something as far as the graves were concerned. I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we need to endorse the Foreign and Commonwealth's mission, which is we work with Cyprus to implement policy on Europe and the single market, building trade for mutual growth. We support all parties in finding a comprehensive settlement in Cyprus and work together to beat international crime and threats to British and international security. I would like to commend the Cypriot President for all his efforts in the unification of Cyprus, and if all goes well, the island could be a wonderful model of how coexistence could be between Muslims and Christians. Cyprus now has a real opportunity to reach an agreement, and that would be a wonderful thing for Europe and the world.